Sanja, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us. It was exciting to see you present at 3686 and get your idea out there, and you made it to the finals. Congratulations on that. That was
Thank you
quite.
so much. It was
You're
really
welcome. That was quite an accomplishment. How did you find the event? Did you enjoy it?
yes, it was excellent for us. We were right at the stage of launching the subscription premium version of our app. We already had some great results we were able to share. We met some awesome investors, some potential partnerships. So it was a very good event for us, all in all.
Very good. Sounds like a lot of good things came out of it. And I always tell people it's a great thing to go to events like that, even when you're not presenting, just because of all the things you talked about, all the networking and investors you can meet and all those
Absolutely.
things. Well, before we go into what you're doing with Homey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what your experience is professionally, and then we'll transition into the story.
Sure. So I studied communication. I'm actually just finishing up my master's degree, and my thesis is on how mobile phones are used in family communication,
Very cool.
which kind of plugs into my startup, Homey, which enables parents to transfer allowance to their kids' bank account. So it can be any bank account open at any bank or credit union in the US, directly to that account from our app based on the household chores that kids do.
That's
Um,
that's great. Great idea.
Previously, I worked in marketing, in some marketing agencies, and also an ed tech startup. So I do have some experience in creating products for kids.
And that was part of your mobile communications background, I guess.
Um, yeah, that as well, but that was mostly web-based,
Okay.
the startup.
Okay. And so what led you to the idea of homing? What can you most entrepreneurs that I talk to, they tend to remember the exact moment they created the idea. So maybe you could take us through that origination story.
Well, Homey didn't start like it is right now. So it started as a chore management app for roommates. While I was doing my bachelor's, I lived with my co-founder and also partner of almost 10 years, and some other students, people, and our apartment was a mess. So we had the chore chart on the wall. I was updating it constantly. It was a lot of work. Sometimes people checked chores out that they didn't really do. That was a big problem in our apartment.
Hmm.
So we had this idea of a mobile app where you take a photo of like dirty dishes in the sink, and when the people who are responsible for that clean it, they have to take a photo again so you can see immediately if it was done actually.
Okay.
So we created a prototype of that, and also some nice looking mock-ups. So those were just mock-ups, designs, and I photoshopped that into photos of people holding a mobile phone. And I posted that on Instagram, and I used hashtag DIY chore chart. Um, and I didn't know that hashtag is used by moms who are sharing their DIY ideas, how they do those family command centers on the walls, like Pinterest moms, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they started writing to us, hey, where is this app? What's it called? How do I find it on the App Store? And of course, it was just a prototype that we used internally. There was no app on the App Store at all. So we did a landing page to gather their emails. It was targeted towards families, and we got more than 500 families to sign up for our app before we had an app.
That's awesome.
We told them, yeah, there's a bit of a wait for the beta version, but let's do some interviews, figure out what you need. So we were able to do a lot of interviews with families before we started developing.
Okay, so I'd like to stay on that for a minute if we can, because one of the common themes that comes up either when I'm doing a blog article or a video or interviewing a startup is constantly pushing this idea of validation. And it sounds like you all understood early on the importance of talking to your customers. because it sounds like they led you away from, well, I'm just going to work this with my roommates, that the moms sort of led you into, well, this is going to really work for chores and kids. That validation is very valuable. You mentioned, it sounds like your marketing also kicked in by doing the landing page and getting people to sign up early and all those kinds of things. At what point, what sort of amount of traction did it take to convince you to move off the roommate thing onto the kids' chores? Was that pretty quick?
Yeah, that was pretty quick. So the first thing we noticed was that all the roommates that sign up for the beta version, they couldn't get their other roommates, the ones that were actually causing all the mess, to use the app, because roommates, they don't have any power over other people. They can't take TV away from other roommates or do anything. And families were using it. They were a lot more engaged. They were putting in rewards before we even had a feature. So they were actually like putting into the description of a chore, they were putting it, if you do this, you're gonna go get this and this.
So they even helped you build out the product and the chores that you would list in the MVP, I guess.
Yes.
Wow.
So the app was just a chore management app, and then we saw that they were putting rewards, that they were using features that weren't there. So we put a rewards feature in there and some points that they were able to exchange for those rewards. And then we saw that the majority of the rewards were allowance. So either straight on allowance or like a commission money for chores. So we started going towards just focusing on that part of the app and doing more interviews around that. And we figured out that financial literacy is a big problem for kids, for families. Their kids are all about instant gratification, and that's what gets them into debt later on in life.
Absolutely.
So then we started looking into how we could integrate allowance into our app, and we found a financial partner. They're called Synapse Pay. They're doing ACH transfers because we found out that savings accounts are actually the most important. So we have some competition that's doing prepaid cards for kids. So you can put money on those cards and kids can spend money from those cards. And our customers are a bit different. They're not looking for a way to spend money. They're looking for a way to teach their kids how to save money. And they wanted to connect their savings account with the app. And this is why we went this route.
So we partnered to do that, so you didn't have to do your own build out of that functionality. You didn't have to deal with any privacy issues around money and transfer and things like that.
Yes, we have a financial partner that takes care of that part, but we still needed to build everything in our app. So it was still a lot of work, and we just launched that part, the premium version of the app, about a month ago.
Okay.
And it's really amazing now actually seeing kids getting their allowance through Homey.
That's a very cool story. Yeah, I have a 9-year-old daughter myself, and we do, with my financial background, we're trying to do a lot of teaching around financial. And I think you hit on definitely a pain point that the moms and the dads are recognizing. I can only speak to the U.S., and I believe you're from Slovenia. Is that right?
Yes, so that's another interesting story. So we are from Slovenia, from Europe. It's a really small country, 2 million people, next to Italy, Austria, Croatia, Hungary, like in the middle there. And when we launched the landing page, we saw that a lot of people were coming or majority of people were coming from the US. Because parenting in Europe is a bit different. We have a lot less kids. So the average in Slovenia is, I think, 1.5 kids per family. And here, our families with 5, 6, 7 kids are more common.
Right.
Especially in the south. So when we launched the app, we were getting users mostly from Texas and from Tennessee. So we just started looking in accelerators in Texas and Tennessee, and that's how we met StartCo, and we decided to come here.
Okay, so that's great that we got to that. That was one of the questions I was going to have is how you made the leap from there to moving to Memphis, I think is where you're at now. Is that right?
Yes.
And
we thought it was really important for us to be where our users are. because we needed to meet them, we needed to find out how they do parenting. So it made a lot more sense for us to be here in Memphis than to be maybe in San Francisco, where there's not a lot of families who would live that kind of lifestyle.
Well, since this is a podcast that features entrepreneurs and startups from the southern United States, just like yourself, maybe we could stay on that topic for a minute. How are you finding the South in terms of resources, access to investors, all those things? Besides, obviously, your customers being here, how are you finding all of that working out for you?
Well, Memphis is actually a really great place for early stage startups, I think. The cost of living here is pretty low, and the startup community is still growing, and it's actually really easy to get meetings with people because they all know StartCo, they all want to help young entrepreneurs, and when you want to talk to somebody at a big company in Memphis, and we have quite a few of them. We have FedEx and ServiceMaster and AutoZone and all sorts of companies. And when you want to talk to them, you're mostly like the first startup founder that month that wants to talk to them. So they're really prepared to help you and get a meeting with you and do everything. And in San Francisco, getting meetings is a lot harder because you're probably like
competition.
You're the 200th person calling them that day.
This is a really good place. So whenever we hit something like this, I always like to stop and tell the audience to really pay attention. So you bring up a really good point. I interviewed John Lanahan from Launch Tennessee in season 1 of the podcast, and we talked about the reason the South is so good for startups. And you've hit on some of those, the cost of living and things like that, but you've also hit on something that we haven't talked about yet. So I want people to take note from your point there, which is, in the South, there's not as much competition from a startup perspective. So the ecosystem may not be built out as much as Silicon Valley and things like that, but as you say, you're not the 200th person to pitch them an idea in the last 3 days kind of thing. So it's a wonderful piece of advice for people to pay attention to, of why at least somewhere in a lesser known startup ecosystem makes sense. That's a great point.
Yeah. The same goes for access to early capital. So early stage capital is not as hard to get in Tennessee, but I do agree that for our next rounds, we're probably going to have to go somewhere where finance, fintech is more developed, and where there's just more access to investors and VCs.
Right, so if I could, how are you funded to date? Self-funded, or have you raised a seed round?
We raised a small seed round, yes. So we're good until the end of the year, and then we'll probably start raising a bigger round.
So your A round will be quite a bit more. Have you thought about how big that's going to be in case investors are listening and that are interested?
I think it's still going to be a seed round. It's going to be around somewhere from $500,000 to $1 million probably.
Okay, and will that go toward build out of more functionality? What's the plans with the app?
It's mostly go towards growth. So we have a couple of hypotheses that we want to test out this year with the money that we already have, because that will enable us to raise money on more friendly terms for us. And we're actually getting really good numbers. So we're converting users from free to premium at 5% conversion rate. The average is actually just 1%.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you said 5, and I immediately knew that was pretty good compared to a lot.
Yeah. For instance, Spotify has, I think, 25%, but they're doing extremely well. And because our market is pretty specific, I think we can improve our numbers further, and we're actually improving them week by week. So we're pretty optimistic about this year.
And how are you marketing how are you getting the word out besides competitions and word of mouth, I imagine? Is there any other, with your marketing background, surely there's more that you're doing?
Yeah, we're mostly working with mom bloggers.
Oh, okay. So the influencers.
We worked with Money Saving Mom, which is a really big blog. We post reviews of our app. We sometimes do giveaways. We are planning an affiliate model with bloggers, and we're going to do that as soon as we launch the web version. And there is also, because we work with all the bank accounts open at any bank or credit union in the US, there's also an option of strategic partnerships directly with banks and credit unions, especially smaller banks, because they are trying to get younger customers, and we can bring that to them. We can help them open up savings accounts for kids through our app directly, because our banking partner actually just allowed that. Help us grow. So there are quite a few growth options for us.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that you have all those in mind, the affiliate side, but also the financial institutions. I come from both working at banks, by the way, and also at credit unions. And specifically, not that banks are not a good choice, but I also love the inclusion of credit unions because they're very member focused. They run programs to encourage kids to save. My daughter has a program through her credit union. I mean, it's a great way to go. And of course, they're just leading you to potentially all the members that they have. And therefore, if you can accomplish that, your user growth will grow pretty quickly. Is there a future functionality you're thinking about inside the app that you want to share? I know you said you just moved to the premium model. Could you maybe talk about the difference between the free and the premium?
So the premium model enables families to add more family members, multiple goals for each of the kids, and also to do bank transactions. So they are able to connect their kids' bank and their own bank and automate allowance payments. And we are planning a completely overhauled version. So we're really happy that we hired a UX and a UI designer.
Oh, good.
Just last month as well. So we're making a much better version, because what we have right now was done by 4 people. So myself, my co-founder, and 2 developers, and none of us is a designer.
Okay. So you made that choice to kind of bring that person on full time and get them involved.
Yeah.
And how many on the team does that mean there is now? Does that mean 3 of you full time now?
It's 4 of us are full time and 2 designers are part time.
Okay, great.
And the new version is going to have a lot more financial features. So it's going to be more focused on allowance management, on goal setting. They'll learn to set short-term financial goals and long-term financial goals, and they'll be able to move money. It will work kind of like a jar system, just with more than 3 jars. So they will be able to send money towards their savings account, towards their checking account, and then towards each of the goals. And when they reach those goals, they will be able to request a payout.
Okay. And the app's available both currently. It's iTunes and Google.
Yeah, it's a native iOS app and a native Android app available on both platforms. And we're just working on a version for the Amazon platform.
Okay, very good. And then you mentioned you're moving some part of it toward desktop as well in the future.
Yes. We want to make a web version just for parents, so not for kids, but for parents to easily manage everything and see kind of like an overview on one screen, because we found out that the mobile screens are often too small for them to really set everything, especially for onboarding.
Sure, their initial setup might be a little bit longer to sort of get things done, but once they're set up through the desktop, they can move to the app to kind of move money back and forth and things like that. What sort of average engagement have you seen with them? Is there any statistics you know offhand in terms of use and how much money may be flowing through on the average user? Anything like that?
Oh, I would actually have to look at that, because I'm not sure about the current data, but we saw great improvements when we launched the premium version.
Sure.
So users that subscribe are a lot more engaged, and we're also seeing big differences in family members.
Okay.
So kids are generally really engaged. They use the app almost every day.
Okay.
And then parents, usually one of the parents comes in the app once a week to pay allowance. That's usually over the weekend. And we always have like at least one family member that's usually one of the parents that's working or more busy, that's not as involved and just comes maybe once when they log in, and then just every couple of months. to
Sure.
check how things are going.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of good stuff. I'm curious, a few questions if I could, just about sort of the experience of being an entrepreneur, so that other people can learn from it. What to this point, what's been the toughest part of doing this whole process?
Huh. Well, with founding a startup, you have to really put yourself out there. You have to be prepared to meet a lot of people, to pitch your idea, to pitch yourself all the time, and it can get overwhelming. Asking people for money is a new thing for most of people, probably, if they're not entrepreneurs.
Sure.
So that felt really weird last year, but through the accelerator, we got used to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just raising money and all those kinds of. Is there any part of it that surprised you that's been easier than you thought it was going to be?
Um, I don't know. I really like how startups do a lot of iteration and customer interviews, and everything changes really fast. And I think now that I've worked in startups for a couple of years, it would be really hard for me to go back to how things are done in the corporate world. Just like I don't know. I think an app like this in a corporate world would take probably like 2 or 3 years to make,
Sure.
and not months.
So is it maybe you like the flexibility and speed with which you can make decisions, and just the process in general of sort of, I think one of the most interesting things about your story for me has been just the fact of how your validation, to some extent, you guys were obviously doing the right thing, but to some extent your validation almost happened for you. You created an app, and it probably was going to have some success that was for the roommate side, but sort of your customers validated where you really should have gone. You were quick to recognize that. You made your pivot, and then you've said a couple of times, I'm sure you've noticed it, you've said, we've talked to people, we've got on the phone with them, we've asked them questions. They were inputting the chores for us, and so along the way, a lot of great things have happened where you've been wise enough to pay attention to what they want, and they've helped you build it. And so you started with some good users, and then it's just continued to grow as you sort of met their needs. So it's a really fascinating story. And then just the idea of moving, overseas because you felt like you needed to be closer to your customers. And so many people might have thought you'd move to California, but as we talked about, you ended up in good old Tennessee, right? So it's a fantastic story. I really appreciate you sharing it. So if people wanted to learn more, is there a website they should go to? I know they can go to the stores to download the app itself, but where would they go to learn more about Homey?
Our landing page is at homeyapp.net.
Okay.
We also have a Facebook, a Twitter account, so they can connect with us there. We're always happy to hear any feedback they might have, any experience with chore apps, with chore management, how they do allowance. We always like to talk to parents, especially, also to kids. So they can find us pretty much everywhere online.
Okay, great. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time today. Great story. Appreciate you sharing it with others. There's going to be a lot of good takeaways from it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Take care.